What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. I talk a lot on here about how to start, build, and maintain a healthy relationship, the core of which comes down to truth, comes down to transparency, comes down to really listening and making the other person feel seen and acknowledged. Let's talk inversion theory today. How to do the opposite. How to stunt, deplete, and destroy relationships. And in the same regard, it would be to do the opposite of everything I suggest in building one. Lie, hide, make the other person feel small, like they don't exist or matter. Elevate your own self-importance and take over the entire relationship as if you are the only one that matters. And then you start the cycle of what we'll refer to as deafening defensiveness, where each person is so triggered and feels so attacked that they cannot even hear the words you are saying. They lose the ability to come to terms with anything you are trying to discuss. And this can happen on a case-to-case, conversation-to-conversation basis. And worse, this can take over the dynamic of your entire relationship, where both of you get further and further away from being able to come to terms on anything at all. And then it's just noise, deafening noise. No one hears each other, and the possibility of peace in a relationship goes out the window, unless both of you are willing to stay committed to each other, and the stakes are high enough for it to even matter to have the relationship. The willingness and importance of the relationship are the cornerstone requirements to make it work. Why am I talking about this? Because for you to become everything you need to become, you need relationships where you don't bring your defensiveness to. And I'm not saying every relationship can necessarily become that. It does take two parties. But for you to have any material transformation in life, you need transformational relationships. You need people who care about you, who you care about. And that care serves as a platform on which you can be seen and be shown yourself, while you also see the other person and show them how they appear. At the least, you have a handful of relationships like this in your life. At your best, you work to steer each and every one of your relationships in this direction, where each and every one of them become an enduring source of transformation and progress, which will ultimately lead to peace in not just that relationship, but in the overall evolving being that you become, that you are becoming. I'm also talking about this because I have seen and been a part of the exact opposite, where each word uttered is misconstrued by the other person that you are trying to have a relationship with, where defensiveness is triggered with each choice of word, where even the simplest of tasks cannot be carried out without monumental difficulty, because the health of the relationship makes even the basic of communication impossible. And have also seen how quickly a relationship can be brought to this place. How you can spend an entire lifetime trying to build towards something positive and destroy it in a few choice words, where both parties walk away then feeling alone and the need to fend for themselves because they lose the hope in the other person to be also looking out for them. And this is how families, tribes and entire societies fall apart. The call to be defensive and look out for your own individualistic needs and forget how that serves or disturbs the entire ecosystem of their own surroundings and eventually spills over to all of humanity. And you almost can't even blame the person because they realistically do have to look out for themselves. The problem isn't with the retreat to this safe place in yourself. That is understandable. The problem is the venturing away from the safety that was provided and maintained in the relationship. What happened there? The distance from the safety that is now felt in the relationship is the gap that now must be filled by the individuals in giving it to themselves. And the self-pursuit of safety and the need that is felt inside to self-protect becomes a major roadblock in communion, the coming together into a union. There's a lot of different ways to maintain safety in a relationship. We can talk about how every conversation is had, how tonality is important, how you need to be reasonable and admit when you are wrong, and not lead with your ego, which means you must remain open. But all those things also get disrupted. Your tonality will become harsher. The words won't be carefully chosen. The ego will block your ability to be open and reasonable and see your own faults and the contributions to the problems. Ultimately, safety is always at stake, but none of these tactics will work unless there's a baseline of trust and truth, a baseline of intentions that cannot be questioned. And that's found not just in your relationship. It's not just a local issue to that relationship, but also found in your overall character, the global you that shows up everywhere, and how you appear to the world. What is your rapport and reputation that sometimes transcends the relationship itself, because your nature looms in the back of someone's mind. Even if they are receiving your best currently, if you are an unreasonable person, but reasonable with one person, it's a huge exposure risk to that one person that you will bring that same unreasonableness into this relationship when the circumstances call for it. And that risk to safety shows up in the depth you don't get to have in your relationships. It's not just because you're doing something wrong in that particular relationship that you can apply some simple tactics to. It's because your overall character lacks bounding to principles. And then all of your relationships reflect that dissonance, that noise, where you are afraid to be seen past a certain point, and in which you fail to see others beyond that same point, that same deafening distance. So while you will trigger defensiveness in certain relationships by doing some very obvious things, you also can't get away from triggering it in almost every relationship in some way or another if you do not address the core continued issues in your character. Ultimately, the relationship you have with yourself must be healed. Maybe you need to get to safety in yourself before anyone else can rely in having safety with you. Either way, we depend on each other. This is work we must do. And the need to get out all the hurdles that get in the way of that dependence going as smoothly as possible is the most important. And this isn't some sort of dependence where one person leans on the other and relies on them for these limited resources. It's the sort of dependence that teams have in the creation of a much larger source and resource. Together, we can do things we cannot do alone. And anything that gets in the way of that togetherness is a risk to those things getting done. And at the end of it all this defensiveness doesn't just protect you. It shields away every chance of that greater good that could have come out of your togetherness. any chance of seeing each other. Closed eye after closed eye. We are all blind. Defense after defense. And we are all deaf to each other. I love you, family. Stay true always. I see you on the next show.